Jesus versus Caesar. Jesus entered the world, not C.S. Lewis, so anonymously and clandestinely, as a baby born to insignificant parents in an out-of-the-way corner of the Roman Empire, because he was a warrior compelled to slip quietly behind enemy lines. Though there is truth to Teilhard de Chardin's claim that God entered his world like an artist entering his studio, which is to say, with utter confidence and familiarity, there is also something quite importantly right about Lewis' observation. The universe that God entered in Christ was not alien to God, but it was, by the same token, hardly friendly to the Creator. Rather, it was enemy-occupied territory. Or to adapt Teilhard's metaphor, it was indeed the artist's studio, but it was filled with trashed, broken and half-finished pieces. Raymond Brown reminds us that the Christmas stories are not charming tales that we tell to children. Despite their undoubted charms, they are harsh and terrible, for the shadow of the cross falls over them. The second chapter of the Gospel of Luke opens with an invocation of two of the weightiest political potentates of the time. In those days, a decree went out from Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration and was taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. Caesar Augustus was the Kyrios of the civilized world, and Quirinius was a satrap, charged with the task of implementing Augustus' will in the eastern corner of the empire. In mentioning those names, Luke is drawing our attention to the domination system, the power establishment of the Roman authority. With the help of Quirinius, Caesar is performing an act uniquely characteristic of one who wields political power, the taking of a census. An emperor would count his people in order to tax them more judiciously, or to draft them more efficiently into his armies, or to enable his underlings in the chain of command to manage them more thoroughly. The manipulative and overbearing quality of census taking becomes clear in the Old Testament when David's desire to take a census of his people is met with the sternest divine disapproval. In commencing his story this way, calling to mind the mighty and powerful, Luke was in line with the best traditions of his day. Poems, narratives, and encomia in the ancient world centered almost invariably on the exploits of the best and brightest. If ordinary persons found their way into such literary accounts, they functioned as, at best, comic relief and more typically as foils to the heroic protagonists. But Luke effects a great reversal, because it becomes clear as the narrative unfolds that this story is not about Augustus and Quirinius at all, but rather about two very ordinary people making their way from one shabby village to another. And in point of fact, Augustus and his aide function in the narrative precisely as a foil to them. Because of the census, Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house and family of David. The decree, which Augustus took to be indicative of his lordship of the world, in fact serves the purpose of moving Joseph and his wife to the city of David, so that the Messiah may be born in the place that God had declared. Real divine power, we are being told, is above worldly power and uses it for its ends. And hence, we ought not concentrate on the negligible authority of Augustus. Rather, we must look to this couple,